Welcome, everyone, to the Cyber Physics Podcast, where we unravel the complex web of cybersecurity through the lens of its foundational principles. I'm your host, and today, we embark on an intellectual journey that mirrors the intricacy of physics itself. Joining us are two remarkable experts, Ranghan Venkatraman and Brent Deterding, as we delve into cyber physics in essence.
So my name is Brent Deterding. I'm a little bit unique among CISOs in a couple different ways. One of which is that I worked for a vendor for 19 years, SecureWorks. So I spent 15 years in operations and 4 years in a sales role, right? So I carried a quota, and there are not been very many CISOs who have done that. Additionally, I'm a little bit unique in that I love my job. Being a CISO is awesome. The stress is not a burden at all, and my satisfaction is through the roof. So it's awesome. I love it. And I'm a CISO of AFNI. We run call centers primarily, about 10,000, 11,000 employees. I report to the CEO and have a team of 22 right now.
No, fantastic. First of all, thank you for that overview. I'm Ranghan Venkatraman. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I run 3 companies. I run a company that's called Resilience that focuses on AI, Pinnacle that focuses on cybersecurity, and Curious that focuses on EdTech. So that's my journey. Love cybersecurity like you do. Love working with AI and quantum computing. We are both we have a component of services, but we have largely a software development platform as well. And our journey is to sort of combine the two into solutions for our customers. That's a bit about ourselves. Yeah. But thank you for the optimism that you have, because I think optimism in any shape or form is very, very contagious. And security as a function, either you love it or you hate it. It's like living in Seattle. Either you love it or you hate it. I was at one point living in Seattle, and the Pacific Northwest is beautiful, and I used to love it. And but I used to hear a lot of people complaining and discussing depression and suicide rates. But the CISOs are in that sort of a realm, because at one end it's a fantastic job, but also they become scapegoats. God forbid something were to happen. If you look at the latest news, Microsoft got hacked on January 19th, and pretty serious. If you look at senior management potentially being compromised. And here you have a company which is the most valuable brand in the world today that gets hacked for whatever reason, and they build the tools, they have all the latest technologies at their disposal, and yet they're victims of it. Your take?
Yeah, by all means. And so I think one of the critical things that enables me to kind of succeed is a personality characteristic that I learned long ago. And that is that I do not experience any anxiety or stress or issues on things that I cannot control. And I think that alone is a very important part, that the likelihood of a threat actor in China, Russia, or Iran, or wherever ruining my year, like personally as a person, is slim to none. That's not going to happen. Now, I do, worry about things that I can control, but I have those things buttoned up pretty tight, and I'm very proud of that. And I draw corollaries with other industries and other professions, right? There are many jobs out there that the stress level is inherently very high, right? Think of an airline pilot. An airline pilot has several hundred souls behind them on the plane, right? That is inherently a stressful position, but you don't see them shaking when they get off the plane. You don't see them occupied with tons of stress over their profession. They are geared to handle their profession well. Now, that may be a personality characteristic, that may be training, that may be a lot of things. But possessing that skill of I'm not going to worry about things that I don't control is, I think, critical to success in this role, and something that I have been able to develop over a couple decades. And I think it's pretty useful, because it's hard to have a bad day. Another thing is just being gracious and being thankful, right? I mean, I have adequate clean water and adequate food and shelter, friends, family, all that. And so when I have all of that, it's kind of hard to have a bad day. Like, oh, so, we missed a deadline or something, or this vendor that I don't control didn't meet the deadline that they said they would. Okay. I mean, do I have to have meetings and send emails and stuff? Yeah, okay. I'll be all right. It'll work
No, I
out.
think it's a great starting point at the end of the day. I think, I look at attitude as analogous to a flat tire. Unless you change it, you really can't move forward. So,
Yeah.
and that's an area that we extensively focus even in the company. We really want people to walk in here happy. We don't even have a vacation policy because we believe that, as an entrepreneur, I love the freedom I have. And the good news is I don't
Yeah.
have a vacation policy, but I never take any vacations because I really can't afford to. And but the thing is that for the people we have, I really want them to come to work, enjoying what they do. It's freedom and responsibility. You have the freedom, but be responsible. And every now and then, my HR will ask me, this so and so that's abusing it or whatever. My point is, if somebody is going to abuse it, the answer is absolutely yes. They are going to do it, but I'm not going to write policies for that least common denominator. I'm going to write policies for
Right.
those that absolutely are leveraging freedom and responsibility. I don't want to run the company based on the lowest common denominator, and that will eventually weed out somehow or the other. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think it's that attitude, that love for life, which I think makes a big difference. And you sound very stoic as well. And I think there's an important philosophy there, which is voluntary discomfort. And I think cybersecurity is a great area when we all are subject to voluntary discomfort on a regular basis, because you're always going to be uncomfortable. And you either get uncomfortable because a bad actor puts you in that situation, or you create voluntary discomforts along the way so that you become prone, like incident, management processes where you run fire drills, things of that nature, and you hopefully put yourself in a really good position in the process.
Yeah, thinking about this, I've not really connected these dots necessarily before, but one of the things that probably helped me is I worked in an operations center for 15 years, right? I was a leader in the operations center for 15 years. And the leader, like I started in a room by myself, right? And built a team around me and trained them and mentored and all that. And when you do that, culture is dramatically important. It's absolutely critical to establish and maintain that culture. And one thing is that we managed at the time, thousands of firewalls and hundreds of environments, right? So it was often, and this is back in the early 2000s, right, when the firewall was always the problem. Like it was always the scapegoat, right? It was always the thing that broke. And so you picked up the phone, and it could be a minor, like gathering information call, or you could be talking to someone who is having the worst day of their year, at the very least, right? And so you have to be able to deal with that, and no video, no body language, right? Just what you say in the tone of your voice conveys, and there might be a room full of people on the other end. And you've got to be the calm, collected leader in that scenario, right? And then that's for the clients, right? But for your own teammates, for the team that you're building and leading, you've got to also do that, because you've got to show them and model for them how to do the same thing. And that really internalizes, like, I don't control this. Like, what I control is this. I control how I handle it, how I fix it, how I communicate about it, how I deal with it, how I learn the hard way from other people having a terribly bad day, right? And that tells you a lot about you, and it tells you a lot about the people that you lead, and tells you a lot about the clients, because you start noticing patterns, right? You notice, like, that worked well, that did not work well. Oh, that triggered, before that was even a term, that triggered that group or that people, that squad. And you learn a lot about empathy. You learn a lot about people responding to their incentives. You learn a lot about what calm leadership looks like, and it ultimately leads into a lot of good things, because you also figure out a lot about a team dynamic, right? I joked that I used the term work spouse. So I was working a lot of hours back then. And the fact of the matter is that I spent many, many hours a day in very close proximity to the same people, almost as much as my wife, right? And so my work spouse was a buddy of mine named Steve. And like, if I was stuck in a call and we all went to the cafe next door, he could get my lunch because he knew what I liked, right? That kind of, and we would bicker sometimes in the morning and things like that. But when you have that dynamic, you learn a lot about leadership, you learn a lot about teamwork, you learn a lot about people, and you learn a lot about how to effectively lead, even with people that you just got on the phone with, and you've never met them, they're having the worst day of their year, and you've got to calmly assure them that you got it and you can control it. That makes a massive difference. And that applies to starter plan, that applies to small company, medium, large enterprise. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, it applies. It's really a human condition, right? And I'm so thankful for the benefits I had of being in the trenches as an individual contributor, but still leading a team of people. And it's only years later that you realize how awesome that really was, right? It's a privilege to lead. It very, very much is.
I've lived by one leadership definition. There are many ones out there, and this one is especially appealing to me, and I can relate to what you're talking about. It's about a can-do attitude with a must-do sense of responsibility. And I think,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's if you really combine the two, I think it's lethal because, and I'd say, especially in the cyber world, I think one of the challenges that we see in many CISOs is they probably have the technical competence to be in their jobs, but probably not the resilience and or the EQ chops. The way you want to categorize it is you need IQ, you need EQ, and you need AQ, which is adversity quotient. And
Okay.
when you possess that, and I think CISOs probably need to look at training in terms of the adversity quotient, because an adversity quotient can be trained through voluntary discomfort, which means that example of voluntary discomfort, as you probably know, is you fast, you take cold showers as an example. So when you do those sorts of things, you put yourself in a more difficult position on a regular basis, and then what happens is the neural pathways start to open up for you to accept variations in your life, which is usually what happens in that job.
Yeah. Funny story. I am about 36 hours into a fast right now. So I do this. I have started fasting once a month. So 3 days a month I fast. And yes, it's
And
beneficial, but it's
can I
also to some
actually tell
degree
you
like,
one thing? You sound
yeah, sure.
and you have the highest energy after 36 hours of fast.
After
No,
30
see,
seconds.
but here
Okay,
is the deal,
cool.
right? I mean, I fast regularly as well, so it's very nice to hear that. But one of the things I've noticed when I fast is that actually, counterintuitively, your energy levels actually keep increasing, not decreasing.
Yeah.
Usually the first day is probably the hardest because you get a headache and whatnot. But then after that, you go on overdrive, and it's
Yeah.
almost that overdrive. You do not get that when you actually consume lots of food. It actually makes you sluggish, and we normally look at it and say, hey. The kind of food we eat has to give you energy. If you eat live foods, it normally doesn't. But fasting is incredible, depending upon which type of fasting you get into. But it's the best. Give you an example. The Prime Minister of
Yeah.
India, Narendra Modi, he fasted for 11 days just on coconut water. He was, they were building this big temple in Ayodhya. You may have read in the news, a big Ram temple, and he just went on an 11-day fast and just having coconut water. In fact, he does it for certain times of the year. Even when he met Barack Obama back then in the White House, he just had a glass of water. He was just doing it for 9 days. So.
Yeah.
And he is
I mean,
brilliant.
it's
His mental agility, his physical energy, all that is like humming. See, there's a clarity that comes in thinking, and it's very, very food related. There's a book called, which you may have even read, which is How Not to Die. And it really
okay.
talks about a vegan-based, plant-based diet through the book. And it talks about the kinds of diseases that actually come by, eating, non-plant-based food. But it's a book that you might enjoy reading, and you may learn something if you haven't read it. But it really, talks about ways. In fact, fasting is known, as you probably know, probably preaching to the choir here, known to, you can live longer, you can live more healthier. And it's just so counterintuitive. People think you have to keep eating, but that's the counterintuitive aspect of it,
Yeah. No, very much. Yeah, hour 24 to 26 is a little iffy for me. The very first time I fasted a couple of years ago, it was great because I realized, and I've never had an issue with weight or anything else, but I realized that I was mentally very dependent on food. Like I looked forward to meals and thinking about what I ate, and when I went without, I realized that it wasn't a physical hunger, but I was mentally hungry more than anything else. And now it's not a big deal. Like I get a little headache and a little stomach thing. It's about hour 24 to 26, and
and
it's
then,
fine. It's really not a big
one
deal.
thing I've found easy, which you may again, have the perspective, is that when you're doing it for a purpose, when you do fast with a purpose, usually you can hold on to it for however long you want to. Generally,
Yeah.
if it doesn't have, it's not anchored by a strong purpose, you tend to give it up quickly. So
Yeah.
Satan is that.
Well, so I will tell you something in very practical terms. So I started my fast on a Saturday night, but then on my wife happened to I didn't tell my wife, and the dinner she had planned for Sunday evening was a really, really good one. So I was like, well, okay, I'm gonna have my the meal that I really, really like, and then after that, then I'll fast for 72 hours. So it's fine, but like there was no compelling reason to me. So I was like, well, okay, I'll have this meal that I really enjoy, and then I'll fast. Okay, that's fine. And you had mentioned resilience or adversity quotient. It's funny because one of the things that I have two sons, 6 and 11, and they're both football players, and this is their first year wrestling. Wrestling I never appreciated before, but wrestling is a mentally and physically brutal sport. It is very, very challenging, and but it is so worthwhile. And my kids might almost get tired of me talking about I don't care about raising good kids. I care a lot about raising good adults. And the three factors that I hit on a lot with them is grit, coachability, and resilience. So it's this last weekend was their first wrestling tournament ever, their first matches ever, and they both lost. And that's fine because technique makes a massive, massive difference. But what I loved, like even my youngest, he's super athletic, and he had this kid, and he didn't know what to do. So he's looking over at his coach, and he's like, "What do I do now?" And he's on bottom, and he's kids on top of him, and his coach is like, "Stand up," and he's like, "Oh, okay." And so he stood up. So I love seeing him after the match or during the match lock onto the coach. So they're sitting there, they're doing something incredibly physically challenging, incredibly mentally demanding and challenging, and they're looking at the coach. So they're building that muscle of grit and coachability and resilience. And I've interviewed hundreds of people getting into cybersecurity, right? And I can smell it. I can smell the right person, right? And what it comes back to, it took me years before I could articulate the grit, coachability, resilience kind of trifecta. But that's really what I'm looking for. When I've interviewed people, like I can cram knowledge into brain. That's not hard, right? Knowledge going into brains is not a hard problem in the grand scheme. What is this something I want to be working with in 10 years? And if the answer is yes, I'll hire them. I don't care. I've hired people from retail and food prep, like restaurants and welders and trucker. I've hired all those people into cybersecurity, not for the head knowledge, not for the certifications, but because of who they were as people. And who they were as people is They were gritty, they were coachable, they were resilient. And you give me those three things, and I can do a whole lot of stuff. And that's exactly what I tell my boys is I'm like, hey, if you have those three things, whatever you want to do, you can do. And here's the awesome thing: if you have those things, if you go down a path and the world changes or things you don't control change, you can pivot. Right? I'm a CISO. I could be a CIO, I could be a CEO, I could run a farm, I could run a small I can do amazing numbers of things. It's really like, what do you want to do? What gives you the lifestyle that you want to live? What fits into your life on the whole? What are your overall goals? What are you naturally good at? And I can apply grit, coachability, and resilience to a lot of different things that in the marketplace. And I like that. And I want that flexibility for my kids because I've heard it termed it different ways, the Navy SEAL mindset or what have you. But the idea is that I have a very sober, realistic uh, outlook on a situation. So I might look at something and say, like, this is going to be nasty. This is going to be really, really challenging. I'll be all right. I'll be okay. We'll be fine. We'll get through it, right? And that attitude of supreme confidence in yourself, almost on the border of being unrealistic, right? But having a very sober realization of the situation, like that's outstanding, right? And you combine that with the gratitude that I mentioned, and for anything, you're like, it'll be okay. I'll be all right. I mean, and this even gets into your philosophy and your faith and all that. Like, if I die, okay, I'll be okay. I'm not worried about it, right? And when you have that attitude, like some vendor missing a deadline, that's no big deal. That's trivial stuff in the grand scheme of things.
Pun intended, with your acronym of, grit, coachability, and resilience. You may just want to flip it and call it GRC, grit, resilience, and coachability, because it lines up with
There you go.
cybersecurity extremely well,
It does. It does. I should do I should come up with the talk track on that. Like a new way to look at GRC.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
You know,
There you go.
but anyway, I mean, see, the way see, for example, my own daughter, works with me, and she's doing her undergrad in Indiana, but she's working in the company as well full time. And one of the things that in the company we talk a lot about, especially coachability, is ability to take feedback. And because the way I look at feedback is this: if you're able to give it direct without a lot of sugar, in other words, what happens a lot of the times, feedback comes in the form of lots of sugar, and it's very little. It's bittersweet, but it's very sweet and very little bitter. And the problem with that is,
Yeah.
when you consume it, it's like dessert. And then the body does not know how to even decompose it, because it thinks it's actually having dessert before it finally realizes it has to have medicine. So if one is able to
Right.
take feedback extremely well, I think you do extremely well. And my daughter, for example, has learned that skill. She's still got about 20% to go, but 80% she gets it. So I was giving this talk to my team, and then I said, let me try it. Let me just add Rutanya, my daughter, and let's see how she handles it. I forewarned the team. I said, I don't know how this is going to go, but it's just a test. And I called her. She was in another meeting, and she comes into the bridge and then says, well, what is it? And I just tell her, whatever you did this morning was absolutely shitty. She just paused for like 2 seconds. It was a group of 10 people she didn't even meet. And she said, Dad, why don't you just tell me what it is? And I'm excited. So what I've taught her is, at the end of the day, to say, I am excited the minute you hear. And what happens is it changes your state immediately.
Yes.
And instead of being defensive, you're just like, wow, I am excited. Even when a client gives us feedback, I just say, I'm excited. So then what happens is your state is perfect, and you're not defensive. You just take it in the right stride. But you either have to say it within yourself, or you have to say it explicitly. But it works like a charm.
Yes. Yeah, there's massive benefit to being able to accept accept feedback. One thing that I think helped me a long time ago is I used to post on Facebook a lot, and I would post about politics, religion, all these tense topics, right? And I had a coworker who would engage with me on there, and he had Asperger's, engineering, autism spectrum stuff, right? And he had zero filter, and he would just say, and I would have people messaging me like, "Dude, why do you talk to this guy?" And I'm like, he's great. Like, it's awesome. Like, what could you not let? Like, there's no BS at all. And if you can get past like the "I'm offended" kind of thing and just look at what he's saying, then you're able to engage and you're able to benefit. And what that really means is that I will look at any person or any situation and say that like there are very few things that I just go, nope, out. Like I don't want to engage, right? I don't want to engage. I don't want to consider that. It makes me uncomfortable mentally, right? That doesn't happen, right? So I'm able to look at anything and go, okay, maybe. Now, are there toxic people in the world? Yes, absolutely there. Are there evil people in the world? Absolutely there are. Right? So there is some point where you've got to be like, okay, so you're just being an ass and I'm out, right? But there's still value. There's still value in that at getting past the initial emotional, like, oh, I'm offended, and being able to engage. And there's a lot of value there. And what I find is that I have people who are dramatically different than I, who are yet close friends, right? Because we've come to respect and appreciate one another despite any differences or whatever else, and it's not a personal thing, right? And but what I don't post on Facebook anymore. What I found is that there are very few people willing to engage for themselves or with other people. And when you find those people, like hold them close because they're valuable, right? And it's also useful because they are also generally willing to give feedback. Like it's I love the people in my life who are on the autism spectrum because
I have a son.
there's
I have a son
no
who's
barrier there.
autistic.
It's awesome.
My first son is autistic. His name is Ritvik, and he's 21 years old. And and I've also met others who borderline autism. They're not exactly autistic by diagnosis, but they're very direct. They're very clean, and what you see is what you get. So I like that.
Yes.
And they're what I call they're brutally honest versus being politely dishonest. In other words.
Yes.
So that's the major difference. And I think, honesty at the end of the day, helps a lot because it's a process of sculpting. I sometimes tell my staff, and I said, allow me to sculpt you because, sculpting is, I'll just give you a mythical story for whatever it's worth. It is about, many of the idols that are made in the Hindu religion are made out of granite, rocks. And so, for example, you must have heard of Ganesha. Is a god among millions of gods in India or the Hindu religion. So one night, the Ganesha was sitting across a rock, and they were just having a conversation. The rock is like, I think you're super lucky. You seem to be adored with flowers and incense sticks and milk and honey and all sorts of things. People fall at you. People love you. People just adore you. Here I am a rock. People piss on me. I'm standing in scorching sun. I'm getting beat by the rain, and I have a miserable life. So Ganesha listens to that and just tells him that, look here, when the sculptor worked on me, it pained a lot. But I let the sculptor sculpt me. But you, on the other hand, resisted it and didn't allow it. That is why I ended up here and you ended up there. And it's a mythical story. Nonetheless, I have used this to, my daughter's, in her training, and she always says, and I always tell her, hey, you want to be sculpted? Or do you want to be the Ganesha or do you want to be the rock? It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
And it works like a charm because it's so, it's so useful because, you have to take the fine tools to sculpt it. And unless that rock
Yes.
lends itself for that, you really cannot. And so humans are the same way. And I also, depending on your belief system, right? I have a simple, some people have asked me the question. I'm so faithful to God, and yet I have an atheist sitting right next to me, and he or she seems to be happy. I have a lot of problems. My view on that is very simple. I say that God, when you worship God as an example, you're going to be hit with a lot of problems. The reason for that is it's the
Yeah.
problems that actually sculpt you at the end of the day. Either
Yeah.
you choose the problems you want to solve or the problems are given to you. In either way, the problems allow you to grow in size. In other words, if I use a metaphor that a problem is 6 feet tall, in order to conquer it, I have to get to 7 feet. Now, if I only deal with 3 feet problems, I'm going to be three or more. But if I'm suddenly now if God throws a 30 feet problem at me, I have to become 31 feet. If you take cybersecurity,
Right.
it's a great place. If for us, I think God, we are the chosen ones because God throws big threat actors, Russia, etc., at us. And what happens? We grow in size because of that. At the end of the day, yes, it looks bad that there is an incident that all that happens, but we grow in size because of that, and despite
Yes.
that, and I think that's the difference, and I think that's how CISOs and people in security, like all of us, as a community, grow. I would actually thank North Korea, Russia, or other countries rather than feeling that my life is miserable because of them.
Yeah. And this generally gets into a kind of a victimhood mentality thing, right? And it's like, no, I'm not a victim, and we're not a victim, and it's good. Adversity is good, no matter if it's a wrestling or a cold shower or brutal feedback or even a cyber instance. So, my organization, we faced a named threat group. We faced Scattered Spider throughout 2022. And how I chose to frame that is I said, I get absolutely free red team assessments because, and I get them on a regular basis because this name threat group, same exact MO as MGM, Caesars, Clorox, all them, all the SIM swapping, all that stuff. Like I dealt with all that, right? And it was fantastic because I was like, normally you have to pay people to do this, and I didn't have to pay anyone. They just did it, and we were able to evict them decisively and quickly. You got an opportunity to test some process and procedures, even if it's just like, can I get everyone on a call in the next 15 minutes? That kind of thing, right? So it allowed us to exercise, and the end result is like, okay, so it totally ruined 4 of my evenings and a bunch of people's evenings, but we learned a lot. We got a lot of confidence, and the business did not suffer. So, and my clients did not suffer. So you're like, what's not to love? Like, what's not to like about that, right? Because I, I will be better. I will be better in 20 years because of those incidents. I will be better. I will in 20 years. I'll say I've been there, done that. I've faced that, and I've had those tough conversations, and I've been there when you don't have all the information, and I've dealt with all that. And you know what? I'm a better CISO because of it. I'm a better person because of it, and so are all my people. And but that is also part of it. I feel like when we encounter negative situations, the tendency many have is to like, okay, that's over. Let's forget it, move on. If an experience is going to be negative, I want to get every possible value out of it that I can. I want to get every possible iota of value that I can out of that experience. And we did so. And that's fantastic. So that enables you to say, okay, yeah, no, it ruins some evenings. Okay, fine. But how much better are we for it? That's awesome, right? And it's like anything else in life, like exercise, eating well, family time, going to church, whatever it is that you do. Like maybe the very first time you did it, you didn't want to, it didn't sound appealing, but it's good for you, so you do it anyway. And then very quickly you find that you really like it because it is valuable to you. I had the exact same conversation with my son last night. He's like many 11-year-olds, right? He's a little bit too much sugar, right? And so he's sitting there and he's having like almost an emotional reaction. He's like, I want to eat something healthy, but nothing sounds good to me. And I'm like, right. There's food for pleasure and there's food for sustenance, and you can have both, but like sometimes we got to do stuff and he's like, yeah, I know. Like it's like wrestling practice. Sometimes you don't want to go, but at the after practice, you benefit. Whether you loved it or not, you benefited from going. You benefit from every single time. And these are not decisions that you make one time and then it's good. These are decisions that you make every single day. Every single day, little choices, little improvements win the day. Like when you look back in 6 months or a year or 2 years or 10 years, it's not like one big, huge decision that makes the difference. Generally, it's a million little tiny decisions that make it. And, it's fantastic because I see my boys are able to absorb this and get these lessons when they're 6 and 11 and 5 and 10 and 4 and 9 and all this. It's way better to learn those lessons at that age than it is at 40 or 35 or 30, right? So that's why I say I'm raising good adults, because you put these things in place and it's fantastically beneficial. But that applies to cybersecurity and junior guys on the team too. It's like I had one of the guys on my team reached out and goes, hey, I'm looking for my next book to read. What should I read? And he was expecting some cyber book or something. And I was like, nah. I was like, read Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman, which I've not read. It's right there. Or read Emotional Intelligence Habits, or read Never Split the Difference, or Who Moved My Cheese, or, whatever. I was like, I have a million books in mind, and I have books that I reread every year. And those are fantastic. Like, success in cyber is not about head knowledge and technical skills. It's just not, right? I mean, success in life is probably that way, but definitely in cyber.
Since you brought up the aspect of books, I'll make sure that I send you my book called Brand, which is just coming out, just getting published.
Absolutely.
And I'll be happy to share that with you. And then my second book is also coming out, which is Seamless Minds. Love to have you read it and provide your input as well. It would really be great. Yeah. And I absolutely love the conversation with you. I would like to, create a second part to this, because I think we barely scratched the surface in this conversation, but it was absolutely awesome to talk to you. And, so I'll request a part 2 and maybe a part 3, depending upon how much we can go on this.
That's fine.
And I'll have them set it up. But thank you so much. I absolutely loved it. And, really like your enthusiasm and your zest for life and your values. I'm very sure our readers will love to, learn from this.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. I appreciate your time.
As we wrap up this enlightening episode of the Cyber Physics Podcast, we want to express our deep appreciation to our insightful guests, Ranghan, Venkatraman, and Brent Deterding, for sharing their wisdom with us today. Cyber physics, in essence, has indeed brought us closer to understanding the intricate forces that govern our digital world. We hope you've gained valuable insights and inspiration to navigate the ever-evolving landscape of cybersecurity. Stay connected, stay informed, and remember, the essence of cyber physics is ever present in our connected reality. Until next time, keep exploring and seeking the equilibrium between innovation and safeguarding. Thank you for joining us on this captivating journey.